Good day everyone and welcome to another tutorial. So today I want to start with the first part of a new series of tutorials I want to do about explosions. So this one can go in various directions. So the first part of the tutorial will be this explosion, the shockwave. So this can be applied to nuclear explosions, it can be applied to localized explosions, it can be applied to, for example, if you're talking about more typical anime fashion, when two characters kind of clash for the first time, you know, the first hit or whatever the case might be, you can have like this shockwave go out. So this is a very simple thing to do. I'm going to be using some of my own tools, actually only one of my own tools, but I want to just emphasize on the fact that this is a free tool that I'm recommending that you use because it's just simpler and easier to use. So let's just get into it. So what you're going to do is, to create the blast, we're going to have to use, number one, a seamless texture, and number two, we're going to create this ring that's going to go outward. So in order to do that, you have to be able to unwrap a circle. Now, everybody knows unwrapping a circle is a pain, so we're not going to struggle to unwrap a circle. Now, if you've watched some of my tutorials before, you know exactly where I'm going with this. So let's get into that. So what you do is you add a cylinder and you remove the caps. No, that can stay, we just remove the caps. Okay, 32 is a bit low res, but this thing is going to move like really fast. So I would not suggest going beyond 64. So for this example, let's do 64 just so it looks really nice. Okay, so we're going to add a seam. Let's prefer from the front. So Control E and say mark seam. There you go. So again in the front and control and just select everything, press U and say cylinder projection. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like. There you go. See, perfectly unwrapped. Matches the edges, everything. But the second you try to put a noise texture on this to create those spiky lines, this is what you're going to get on that seam. Now, sometimes it shows super obvious, sometimes it does not. So I'm going to take a risk by doing this. I just want to reduce these samples. Speed is always better than quality when it comes to work in progress. Okay, so let's add a noise texture. Okay, now today it's not really going to show because it's still on generated. We want to put it on UV. Okay, yeah, you see it's not cooperating, it's being mean-spirited. Okay, so there we go. It put the seam on the backside, which is just like, okay, that's weird. So this is where the tool comes in. When you, I'm going to show you the trick. I'm going to show you how it works because the tool is anyway free. So what you do is you use two noise textures and you offset the one. Okay, so you set the one to -1 on the X, and then you mix them using a gradient texture. So you get a gradient. Let's just get this one in. I might have to rotate it. Not always 100% certain on this one. Okay. See, I built these things quite a while ago, so I keep posting about them because they're always so useful. So let's put that in there. Okay, so we're going to have to rotate it, which is fine. Just want to make sure I'm rotating it right. Okay. See, that's part of the problem. Whenever you duplicate things, you have to be careful. Okay, so now it should be fine. Let's see. Okay, not yet. So let's make this +1. It's +1, not -1. So now you have a seamless noise texture. But the problem is you also have to add controls to shift it, scale it, move it, rotate, all that kind of fun stuff. But you don't have to do that because I've already built that. And that's the tool we're going to be using. I'll put a link to it in the description. I think it's available on my CG Trader as well, but I know it's on my blend swap. So yeah, so you go group, and then you can choose between gray or color. I have not really tried the color. Let's see what it looks like. It should still also be seamless. Yeah, perfectly seamless. It seems we have something that works. I love dad jokes. Okay, so what you do is you just select this one, shrink it a little bit, and take it down. So as you can see, we have the makings of our blast circle, which is really cool. So select everything, scale Z and 0, and that gives us our initial bang, so to speak. But this is not good enough because we have to do two things. Number one, we have to add a gradient texture to this as well, because we want the inside stripes to be longer than the outside stripes. And the reason for this is whenever there's a blast, it goes out from the center, but it goes out in every direction. So that means 360 on the horizontal and 360 on the vertical. This means that you have like this Fresnel effect to the edges, which means your short edges are on the outside, long edges on the inside. So let's do that. So we're gonna go texture and gradient. This time we're gonna have to rotate it because the default rotation last time produced the elongated one. So I'm just gonna have to offset this on the UV, please. Thank you. Okay, so we want it to be, okay, we're gonna have to split this thing in two. So let's just make this 1 or 0. Let's see what it does. Yeah, it's gonna have to make it 1. Okay. Okay, I'm kind of recording this unprepared because I just want to share this. It's such a cool thing. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use overlay. It just works well. Get overlay. And then, of course, we can use the gray. Flip these over. I'm using 3.6, by the way, just heads up. Okay. And we want to obviously scale this thing. Okay, we want more on the X, but we also want to stretch this thing out. Something like that. That's very cool. I like that. Okay. Perhaps I should multiply instead. Okay, and then black, of course. Yeah, I see like that. Long on the inside, short on the outside. I think we're going to use B, spleen, spline, whatever on this one. Something like that. That's very cool. And now we're going to have to make it a little bit rougher because this is just a bit too smooth. So you can use a color ramp to do this. It's not very difficult. I do think we need to squeeze it a little bit more. Yeah, definitely gonna need to squeeze it a bit more. So let's use this B spleen thing again. I'm not sure how to pronounce a lot of these things. It's ridiculous. It just is. Okay, we don't want to overdo it. Kind of looks like an eye, doesn't it? Very cool. Okay, so let's add a little bit more detail. That's very cool. Okay, we do want to stretch it. Okay, that's as far as it's going to stretch. So let's make it 11 and call it a day. Okay. Want it to be a little bit stronger. Okay, so this will also be our alpha. So what you can do is you can use a mix shader and get a transparent, and you can just, you can use an emission for this one because we're doing this in EV. It shouldn't be an issue whatsoever in terms of actually adding light to the scene. Maybe that comes later with, goodness, what's it called? EV Next. So you can choose to use hashed, clip, or blend. In this case, blend is going to work the best, and you can just turn off any shadows. There we go. So what we also want to do is we want to go object and set the origin to the geometry so that as it goes out, you'll have it nice and centered. It's really cool. But this is not where it ends. Because the blast expands, it kind of retains its size as it fades out. So what you can do is you can use shape keys to scale it. And this is also where there's a little extra trick that you can use. So let's call this one size. And we're going to up the value. So what you do is you use proportional editing to scale the inside out, which means that as it expands, it will kind of thin out instead of just looking like something you're scaling up. It'll be a little bit more organic. That's the best way to describe it. You can see what happens. See that? Just want to shrink it a little bit. Something like that. See what it does. Look at that. As the speed diminishes, it just kind of stops. This does not mean that you can't use scale in conjunction with it, because depending on the size of your scene and the intensity, all that kind of stuff, you definitely have to combine it to get the result that you want. So to take it further, because usually this first step is not as cool as you necessarily want it to be. What you can do is you can increase this max value, and the cool thing about Blender is it knows how to extrapolate. So if you increase the max value, it will increase as well. So look at what happens if I set it to 5. Okay, and now I expand it. Look at that. So this way you can know where it's going to stop. So the best way to stop it is roughly at 1.8. So let's put this at 1.8. And then we can just take it like that. And you can do the same for the for the minimum. So you can also say the minimum range, say -1, because I don't think we're going to go far with this one before it starts to kind of look weird like that. So we're going to start at about -0.6, which is great. So let's copy that. Okay, look at that. So let's just get rid of the outlines because it's looking weird. Look at that. That is really cool. I love that. So you can also animate it to become invisible if you want to. It's totally up to you. So I'm going to just quickly animate this. Okay, so the final thing to do would be to make sure that despite the animation being cool and whatnot, that it is number one in the right location. So don't necessarily add keyframes for your location, but also make sure it always faces your active camera. Now the way to do that is to go into your constraints, sorry, and go copy rotation, and then you select your camera. Now I don't have a camera in the shot yet, so I'm going to quickly add one. Okay, and I'm going to just move it because I want you guys to see the result of what it does. Okay, so right now, if you look at the explosion, it can see it's off perspective, which can be cool if that's what you want, but that's not what I want in this instance. I want it to be like almost like an objective view, and like we are seeing a physical spherical shockwave, if that makes sense. So all you need to do is you pick your camera, and there you go. Now it's always facing the camera. So watch what happens if I rotate it. Behaves exactly like a sphere would, visually speaking. Yeah. So I'm not one of those people who would try to put this on a sphere. I think you would be able to, but honestly and truly, why would you make it harder? It's just not. So this is what it would look like. Absolutely awesome. So that's it for this time. Next one, we will cover the cloud.